Okay, class, we are doing the last part of the last lab. Last time we met, we did certificate servers. If you can see that I'm on my certificate server now, and I have a bunch of certificates that I've generated. We created some templates. Um, we set up our online responder. So our certificate server is up and running. We made some group policies so everyone knows who the certificate server is. We can see that I'm passing out certificates for all three domains. So everything is running good right now. So what we're going to do now is set up a certificate for a web server. And we're going to cluster those two web servers using NLB. Before I did this lab, I rebooted all my DCs. So before I came back today, I just first thing signed in, rebooted all the DCs. Turned everything on and rebooted all the DCs. Waking them up from hibernation is not the same as rebooting them. So I'm going to look at our map. I can see that the first web server will have two IPs, dot 8.5 and 8.9. So I'm going to go to ww1. I've already signed in. I'm going to name this interface NLB and this one private. One 172.16.8.5 and my gateway is 16.8.1. My two DNS servers are 172.16.8.2 and 8.3. DC3 and DC4 are my DNS servers. And again, the IPs were 8.5 and 8.9. Now, in the past, I told you only one interface could get a gateway. But when you're dealing with NLB, which we did in the last class, I need a gateway on both interfaces or it might not work. So this will generate an error, but just click OK to pass the error. 8.9. You see it automatically populated the gateway based on the other interface. It's giving me a warning about the double gateway. That's fine. And then I'm going to join it to the domain. And reboot. Didn't mean to do that. Let's try this again. I don't know why this keeps disappearing on me. Now I'm going to configure the IP settings for www2, which is 8.6 and 8.10. I'm going to relabel this NLB and this one private. When we set up the NLB, you'll see why I call that NLB. Now I'm going to have the same warning in regards to okay, I'm going to try to reboot this. Haven't had that before in Ace IT. Okay, now I'm going to do the IP again. So I set the IP addresses up. I'm joining it to the domain. Now I'm going back to www.1. When I sign in, I'm going to go to other users so I can sign in as a domain admin and not the local admin. While that's working, I'm going to go and sign in on www.2. Again, click on other user. So I'm going back to www.1. I'm going to click on manage. I'm going to add roles and features. I'm going to install the web server under roles and the tools to manage it. And then I'm going to install under features network load balancing. Next, next, and just keep walking through the wizard. I'm going to do the same thing for www.2. Choose the web server. Then network load balance under features. Reboot if necessary. I'm going to go check on www.1. It's still installing, so I'm going to pause the video. Okay, it's installed on www.1 and installed on, I'm still waiting for W2. So I'm going to pause the video again. Sorry, I just clicked OK. It's installed on www.2 now. So I clicked OK to close the dialog box. So I'm going back to www.1. Click OK. Click Tools. And I'm looking for Network Load Balance Manager. So before I go through and configure the web servers, I just want to set up the cluster. We did this in the last class. So I'm going to create a new cluster. I'm going to call, I'm going to put in this machine first. And I'm going to use the NLB interface to be part of the cluster. The other interface will be used for normal network traffic. And this is information about this machine. If both machines have the same load, this will get priority. When it boots up the machine, make sure that NLB is automatically started. This is going to be a shared IP that both members of the cluster will use. So I'm going to use 8.100 just because no other machine is using that. Click OK. And this is going to be, the cluster is going to be www.contoso.com. So we need to put an entry in DNS for that host name to that IP. And it's going to be multicast. Right now, it's going to listen on all ports. I don't want that. I'm just going to change it to only listen on port 80 to 80. TCP. That's our website. That's what HTTP listens on. Port 80 TCP. Then finish. Before I add another host to the cluster, I want to make sure I get a converged state. And this becomes green. I'm going to, now I'm in a converged state, it's green. I'm going to highlight my cluster and add another host. This time I'm going to add www2. I'm going to choose the NLB interface. I have a problem here. So I'm going to press cancel. I'm going to go back to www2. I should be 172.16.8.10 for the private interface. So I must not have clicked OK. Or I might have skipped this part. Yeah, I think I skipped it. Got the warning for duplicate gateways, or multiple gateways rather. That's fine. So I'm going to go back to ww1. Add a host to the cluster. www2. Choose the NLB interface to be part of the cluster. The private interface will be used for normal network traffic. This will be, if all machines have the same load, this will be the second machine that gets the request. I've already configured this when I set up the cluster, so I'm waiting for a converged state. Okay, so everything is working there. So now I'm going to go to DC3 because it's on the same site as my web servers, and I'm going to resolve that name to an IP. I'm going to launch DNS. So I'm going to create an entry for www and resolve that to our cluster IP. So when users type www, it'll send them to one of these two machines. Rarely do you have a scenario where one web server is handling a site. Generally, you have multiple web servers handling a site. This is one way to handle that, is through an NLB cluster. When you send traffic to the cluster, it'll decide which machine has less traffic and then send that request to that particular machine. When one machine goes down, the cluster will not send traffic to that machine anymore until it's brought back up. So I'm going to click OK. So I created a forward lookup and a reverse lookup for www. Now here's the other thing. If you don't want to do that, you can do something like, I'm going to go to properties of my zone. Actually, I'm not. I want to go properties of the server. And under advanced, there's something called enable round robin. If I didn't want to set up a cluster, what I could do is create an entry for each machine using the same name. So I could have only had one NIC on each of these machines, and I would create an entry for www and associate that to 172.16.8.5, and then create another entry for www, which would be 172.16.8.6. So the first time someone resolves the name, I'll resolve it to this IP. Second time someone resolves the name, I'll resolve it to this IP. Third person that comes in, I'll send them to here. Fourth person that comes in, I'll send it to here. That's called DNS round robin. The problem with this method is DNS doesn't know if the machine is up and running, where NLB would. So if I had 3 web servers and one web server was down, every third person that connected, they wouldn't be able to connect because the web server's down. Where NLB, when a server goes down, the NLB process will no longer send traffic to that server. Okay, so our NLB is completely configured. I should be able to open up a prompt, and I do ipconfig /all, and I can see that my NLB interface has 2 IPs, 8.5 and 8.100. If I go to www2, and open up a command prompt and do ns to ipconfig, I can see this machine, the NLB interface has two IPs, 8.6 and 8.100. So both machines are listening to that 8.100. And there's some layer 2 stuff going on there as well. They're both responding to that IP address. So if I go back to the first machine and I do an ns lookup to www.contoso, if I can type it, I can see that it resolves to 8.100. It doesn't really matter what the real name of the computer is. As long as I resolve the name, the people type in the URL to the IP of the cluster, it'll send them to one of those 2 machines. So now I'm going to make inetpub my site. When I installed the web server, it created a folder called inetpub for Internet Public. This is where all your web content should reside. So in that directory, I'm going to create a subdirectory called my site. And then I'm going to echo test into a file, inetpub my site index.html. I'm just creating some content, an HTML file, and the only thing that's going to be in it is the word test. So I need to create the web content on both web servers. So again, I'm going to make a subdirectory under the inetpub directory. So make dir inetpub. Guys, I hit tab complete. Echo test into inetpub, my site, index.html. I can't tab complete index.html because it doesn't exist. So I created some web content on both web servers. And so now I'm going to create a website on both web servers. I'm going to go to Internet Information Services. I'm going to right click Sites and say Add Website. This name is not important. I don't want you to think that's where you type the host name, so that's why I put whatever. I'm going to browse to the directory where my index file, my index.html file is. So that is stored in the My Site folder. And when someone types in www.contoso.com in the browser, that does two things. First, it resolves it to the IP of our cluster. Then once it connects to that machine and it sends an HTTP GET request, it then takes that same name that you typed in the URL and adds it to the host header field and sends it to the web server. The web server will take that name and match it, because I might have 30 different websites here. So it's going to try to match whatever they typed in the URL field to an actual website. So it can only have this on one website within a web server. And then that's how the web server knows which website a user wants to view based on the host header value. It's whatever name they typed in the URL. Two purposes. Resolves it to an IP to get to the web server. Then puts that in the host header field so it can get to the actual website on that web server. So click OK. And there's my first website. So now I'm going to do the same thing for www2. Now, when you set up NLB, you need to be consistent with your web content. You don't want one person to go to a website and get one page and a different person to connect, and they end up connecting to the other web server and get a different page. So there's no replication mechanism in NLB. You need to make sure that your website, most likely it's going to be a static website, and it's going to have the same web page on both web servers. Again, this is just for IIS for this list of websites. That's the name that it'll be. I gotta pause because I have to sneeze. Okay, I'm back. I'm gonna go to the folder where my index.html file is located. Then I'm going to put in our host header value. And again, this name needs to be resolvable to the cluster IP. So I have the website set up on both servers. So now what I'm going to do is highlight my server. And we're going to request a certificate for this website. So I'm going to go to Server Certificates, double click. I'm going to create a domain certificate. Now, if this was going to a certificate server from the internet like VeriSign, I would complete the request, put it on a thumb drive, mail it securely to VeriSign. They will do their part, then send me back the certificate. I've seen companies actually email the request and get the certificate back through email. Email isn't secure. If your website certificate gets compromised, you might as well not have gotten a certificate. So don't just send it through email. Send it through Iron Mountain or something like that. Or Brinks will even deliver website certificate requests. So there's a lot of services that'll do secure delivery. Since we have our own certificate server, we're just going to create one from the certificate server. If this was just for testing purposes, um, I could just create a self-signed certificate that's only good for just testing purposes. So I'm going to create a domain certificate. The common name will be www.contoso.com. That's going to be the name they type in the URL. The organization will be contoso.limited. That's who's ordering it. The organization unit will be the web services department is ordering this certificate. Guys, it'll work here, but if you're using VeriSign or something like that, you don't want to abbreviate any names. They need to be fully spelled out. Click Next. I know about my certificate server because I found that in Active Directory through the group policy. So this is going to be Contoso now we want to make sure that we don't put www.contoso.com here, because when we look at our list of certificates, it might get confusing if you have two names. So I like to make the friendly name something more descriptive, not just be the URL value, because you won't know which certificate is which. And I'll show you where that is applicable. So I'm going to click Finish. So I'm going to go back to this whatever. This time I'm going to change the bindings. I should have done the certificate first, but I didn't. So I'm going to highlight whatever, go to bindings, and I'm going to add a binding. I should have done this when I set up the website. I want to make it HTTPS. The host header value will be www.contoso.com, and I'm going to choose that certificate I created. Click OK, and I don't really need the port 80 anymore. I only want this to be a secure website. In reality, you're probably going to want the port 80 in case someone doesn't type HTTPS, and when someone connects to that website, you just redirect them to this website. So I'm using my certificate, highlight it, edit it. There's a certificate that I created. I'm going to click Close. So now this website is secure. I'm going to open up the Internet Explorer. I'm just going to use recommended settings for now. Enhanced security configuration is not turned on because we turned it off when we set up the server. Right there, it's turned off. By default, web server won't, when a server product won't run any scripts. But just for our labs, we just turned it off. So I'm going to type in https://www.contoso.com. Hopefully it'll connect me to this machine. It does. So it connects me to my machine that actually has the certificate. Because remember, right now I've only created it on the first server. I don't have a certificate yet. So right now I can see I'm connecting securely. There's my little padlock. I'm going to go there and view the certificate, details, certificate path. This is the certificate that I've created. I can see that my certificate server assigned it. If I click there, there's details about my CA that I trust because I have the group policy. There is um, details about this actual certificate, and there's my trust path. Right now, this trust this. Okay, I'm going to pause the video for 1 minute. Okay, so this certificate is working fine. So what I'm going to do now is I've created a certificate on this one web server. I'm going to carry it over to the other web server. So I'm going to go to my C drive. I'm going to create a new folder called cert, just for lack of a better name, and share it. Then I'm going to go to IIS. So I created the certificate here. Now I mainly need to add it over here. So what I'm going to do is highlight my server. I'm going to go to server certificates. I'm going to highlight that certificate. And I'm going to export it. I'm going to export it to that folder I created. I'm just going to call the cert www. It's going to give it a pfx prefix. Postfix rather. So I'm going to click OK. And you have to give it a password. I'm just going to use our standard password. Something's not right. So I'm going to export my certificate and put it in a folder which I've shared on the network. You could put it on a thumb drive, whatever you want to do. Again, I need to do it securely, but for this lab, I'm just doing it this way. So once I have the certificate exported, I'm going to go to www2. I'm going to connect to www1. Copy that. To my desktop. And then I'm going to go back to IIS. I'm going to highlight the web server. Go to server certificates. And this time do an import. I'm going to browse for that. Certificate that I've created. I'm going to place it in my web hosting store. I have a bunch of different, for lack of a better term, folders to where I store different types of certificates. If it's a personal type certificate, I would put it in the personal folder, then only I can access it. If you put it in the web hosting folder, then you can use it for a bunch of different purposes. If you don't want anyone to be able to grab this certificate and export it to a different location, you want to select this. And then we want to type in the password. Now, the thing is, if someone gets a hold of that certificate that I exported, and they don't know the password, they won't be able to do anything with that certificate. So I'm going to click OK for import. So now that web certificate that I used, that I associated to that name, I created here, I exported it, brought it in here. So once I have the web certificate, I'm going to go back to my website, go back to the bindings, add one for secure HTTP, type in the host header value, and if I had a bunch of certificates called www.contoso.com, I wouldn't know which one is which. So that's why I like to make the friendly name more descriptive. Click OK. Remove the HTTP, so it's just 443. I'm just going to edit it again just so you can see it. There's my host header value. There's my certificate. Click close. I'm going to type HTTPS www.contoso.com, and I can see it's secure. But guys, both websites have tests in it, so I don't know which one I'm getting. So if you want to test it, from experience, guys, I happen to be on www2, so I know this is connecting me to www2. But if you want to, you could do something like echo server, or I'm going to go www2 into inetpub, my site index, and I'm going to do the same on www1, just so we know which site we're connecting to. Echo. Now remember, once this goes into production, you need to make sure that you have the same consistent data in both sites. So this is just for testing purposes. So I'm going to go here on my www1, refresh, and I can see I'm connecting to this web server. I can see that it's secure. If this bar is red, something's wrong. I'm going to go to www2, open up my web browser. I'm going to refresh. I can see I'm connecting to www2. This bar is not red. My server is, my connection is secure. Um, so, guys, that's it for this class. Once you get done with the labs, you send me an email in D2L. Don't text me because it's hard for me to get to all the machines at one time. I'll go through, review all your labs, make sure that you've done them, and give you a grade for your final skills exam. This the last day of the semester is May 3rd, so I need you to have everything done essentially by the midnight of May 2nd. That's when I would prefer everything would be done. So that's it, guys. I probably will see you sometime in the future. I don't know when we'll be allowed back on campus, but this has been an interesting class. I think it turned out in this environment. I think it's the best we could have hoped for. Um, ACE-IT really has come in handy, and for the issues that I have had with ACE-IT are minimal compared to not having to be able to do this lab at all or having to cancel the class because we can't do the lab. So it's been a really fun class. I was glad I was able to do it with ACE IT, and I hope you got value out of the class. Thank you, and I will see you when I see you.